So this panel is a bit longer than the last panel, and what that means is we have more opportunity to get questions from the audience. So as a reminder, everyone is free to ask questions. For questions to be dealt with in an efficient manner, it'd be best if you lined up at that X over there. We'll have Armand holding a mic for that. And in addition, since Drishti is specifically targeted for college students, we'd like to get to their questions first and then focus on the questions from the rest of the community. All right, let's get started.
So, namaste everyone. As the president of the organization, I want to thank you all for coming out. It's a really deep honor to have such a diverse and large audience at one of our events. I hope that you guys are really getting a lot out of this event. There's a lot more coming as well. So there's a lot to look forward to, but thanks again. So this panel on cultural appropriation, we're going to have a diverse set of views presented on this panel, and I think that I'll start by giving kind of an overarching, big picture look at what is cultural appropriation. You all may have seen it online somewhere on Facebook. Somebody posted an article like the sports teams are using the Native Americans logos, and that's a travesty. And there's a lot of kind of discussion going on about it in that space, especially in social media and amongst social activists. However, how does it apply to Hinduism, and how does it apply to Hindu youth? So that's something that I want to just start the discussion on. But basically, cultural appropriation happens between two civilizations that have an asymmetrical power structure in comparison to each other. So when you put two civilizations together, and we can use like this amalgamation of the West, quote unquote, as being this Eurocentric, Judeo-Christian or Abrahamic structure versus, let's say, the East, which is an amalgamation of the Hermic civilizations and other kind of like non-Abrahamic kind of centric civilizations. So, So there is a demonstrated asymmetrical power structure between these civilizations, just as there is, with Native Americans and the whole manifest destiny of expansion westward in America. There's a asymmetry of power in the slave trade that occurred just hundreds of years ago. So this kind of asymmetrical power structure exists, and it allows the dominant culture to exploit and oppress in subversive ways, especially culturally. It allows them to exert that influence in certain ways. So one of the primary examples that we see today is yoga. And yoga is essentially $1 billion industry in America, and it's kind of the up-and-coming, or it already is kind of really embedded and established as a cultural norm of the West, of the kind of average American, especially the American female who's a liberal. So what are these, what are the kind of buzzwords that you hear? Like you hear mindfulness, vegetarianism is like a new fad kind of, holistic health and alternative therapies are on the rise, but where are these really from? And is the original source in any way authentically credited and authentically represented? So in terms of what do I mean by authentic representation, like perhaps there is some form of representation, like we'll say namaste at the end of the class and it means that we're connected, or we'll start off with Om and that means we're being spiritual in some way. Like, does it go beyond that, really? And I don't think that it does in the majority of places. Of course, there's exceptions, but I think that the attitude and the manner of engagement that is basically facilitated by this asymmetry of power is really detracting from the original source and the meaning and the significance, especially the spiritual significance. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali says Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which basically means yoga is a cessation of all thought. So literally, yoga is no thinking or no thought movements in the mind. And over here, obviously, yoga equals asana, which is just one tiny part of the entire yoga practice. There's obviously yama, niyama, kind of like the moral constraints and obligations, and then there's the entire meditative aspect of it, which isn't really touched, the breathing exercises as well. So, excuse me. So as far as yoga goes, and actually, even in the Yoga Sutras, just as an aside, Patanjali says the whole point of asana itself is just to develop a strong back so that you can sit to meditate. So all of the benefits that are being reaped of yoga are kind of, side effects of the real point of yoga, which is this immensely deep meditation where your mind just ceases and your ego disappears and you merge into oneness, which is that ultimate philosophy. So do we see this being represented? How much do we see this being represented? Do we talk about literally the Hindu roots of yoga at all? And I think this is a really important point because the inability to recognize the roots and to give credit stems from the ignorance of the baggage that is perceived that comes with it. So the way that the West kind of perceives Hinduism is, our keynote speaker has actually coined this phrase, Rajiv Malhotra coined the phrase caste, cows, and curry. So this is kind of what Hinduism is condensed into, that it's like the dirty, like kind of savage environment over there, and they have really good food though, so we go there to get exotic experiences, but that's about it. This is kind of how it's condensed in people's minds, and that is one of the reasons that yoga is not really truly appreciated with all of its beauty, because there's this barrier of ignorance. And I think that, of course, it is a billion-dollar industry, and it is dangerous that they're making that much money out of it. But ultimately, the ultimate result that I think is much more harmful is that it changes the original nature of it changes what it genuinely is, because the owners of yoga stop being the people who grew up with it, who grew up around it, who did it their whole lives, and then it becomes other people who have rejected many important parts of it. So not only is that happening with yoga, that's also happening with Holi, with color runs. You guys are familiar with color runs, like it's this new fad. Same thing with the whole mindfulness thing. Like there's a ton of research being done on that, which is amazing, and we're glad to like share this wealth with the world. But it's totally being erased of its roots. And I'm getting the red sign, so I could obviously speak about this passionately for a while. But I'll pass it on. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Ravi. Thank you guys for having me. So my name is Arnav. I'm probably the furthest one from this area. I don't come to Boston too often. I'm from Dallas, actually. Ravi's framework, I think, is a very good one for analyzing and looking at the impact of cultural misappropriation. So rather than try to provide a new framework, I'm just going to try to provide an example from my own life within that framework and express why I think the misappropriation is a bad thing. And if I'm not holding the mic close enough, just turn on, I'll let me know. So I went to Washington University in St. Louis. I graduated class of 2014, and I was on the Garbaras team over there. So just a quick show of hands. Is anyone here, were you on a Garbaras team, or did you have one at your college? All right. And for those of you that weren't on a team or didn't have one, have you been to a competition or seen a YouTube video of a dance? And how many of you guys felt a little insecure at times, or looked around the audience, looked at parents to see what their reaction was at certain points, thought, what is going on? Have any of you guys felt that way? I see some nods. Maybe not all of you guys feel that way. But for me, I kind of see Ross as a big potential area for misappropriation in the next 10 years if we're not careful. And I'll kind of explain my logic, but for those of you that aren't familiar with it, Garbaras in the US has kind of grown slowly over the last 20 years, I'd say. And in the last 10 years, with the information age and with YouTube videos, you see all these videos posted online, competition becomes more competitive, people try to differentiate, come up with new choreo, and you see a lot of new ideas coming around in Garbaras competition. So the big thing that you see is this concept of themes, integrating a theme into Garbaras. So for example, having like a basketball theme, or a storyline, or a Bollywood, fixation around your story to kind of differentiate yourself from other teams. And this is kind of substituting for the Hindu element of Garbaras, in my opinion. And what's happening currently, I see, is there's a big push to make Garbaras more accessible. Why can't we get other people involved? It doesn't have to be an Indian activity, let alone a Hindu activity. So we're starting to see, which is partially a good thing, we're starting to see more and more non-Hindus join the teams, even become captains. And it slowly is merging with pop culture elements, hip-hop. You see a lot of mixes with pop culture songs in them. So the fundamental question I'm sure some of you might have, and what I was asked by my panel very intensely is this appropriation? Isn't that just kind of us doing weird things with our culture, or trying to find new ways to express it, or is it really appropriation of Hindus themselves or ourselves are the ones changing a tradition? And I strongly believe yes. If we take Ravi's initial framework, which is an imbalance of power where a dominant culture takes some kind of artifact, takes the pieces that they view as useful, and then removes the parts that they don't like or think are savage or unsavory. I see Garbaras as already having been misappropriated by mostly Hindus. And I have a pretty low standard for determining misappropriation. My standard is, if I were to take something that my grandmother had seen when she was alive, and if I showed her what that was today, would I think her reaction is understanding, and would she find comfort in that, or would she find it to be different and kind of alien and something she couldn't really cope with? And I think that's my standard for Garbaras today. Ravi had shared a pretty nice article about yoga, and the perspective was, to be colonized or to have your culture be misappropriated is to become a stranger in your own home. So for me, it's really hard for me to judge that for myself, but if I see my grandparents, my parents, unable to really relate to Garbaras or other types of dance at colleges, then I consider it to be misappropriation. We're starting to see other forms of misappropriation of Garbaras. I get Facebook notices of Garbo workouts, stick dances, but I am really scared that in the next 10, 20 years, we will start seeing even other forms of misappropriation, such as maybe like Christian Ras. I know we were talking yesterday, and there's already signs of like Christian Bharatanatyam that are occurring. I really think that in the next 10, 20 years, we could see even worse forms of misappropriation if we don't find a way to kind of combat that today.
Namaste everyone, my name is Shyam. I'm currently a senior at Stony Brook University. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk actually what you ended on, of how to combat appropriation, realistic ways to deal with it. And I think being Hindu Americans, it's a fine line that we have to toe. And what I mean is this: we're all on this panel, we agree that cultural appropriation is a terrible thing. It's not fair to cherry pick what you want from a culture and then completely disregard the other parts of it and say, well, this is my thing now, and it never belonged to whatever culture you're taking it from. And that's morally wrong, ethically wrong. At the same time, we see throughout the world these silos of fundamentalist groups forming, saying, this is how I define what I believe in, and unless you accept this and become like me, you are not a true X, whatever it may be. And in that, we also need to be careful not to step into that territory. It is a globalizing world, and it's as Allegra was saying before, it's the information age. People have more access to information than ever before. And so it's important to say that, we are all coming together. And we have to be able to adapt to the changing world, which is very, very much in the spirit of Hinduism historically, of adapting to new people, new ideas, and we have to continue being malleable because we don't know where people come from, how they view the world, what they believe in. And we have to realize that for different people, different things will resonate with them, and different things will be palatable. And it is not up to us to determine what that is for that other person. And if someone else can only palate some of it, then we have to accept that that's what they want. But at the same time, we have a certain dharma, right? As Hindu Americans, Hinduism is foreign to the United States. This is a foreign land. Even if we were born here, our culture and our beliefs are foreign to this land. And so it is our duty, it is our dharma to protect the tradition and make sure that people know, yoga is from the same Hinduism that everything else is from. And one analogy that I like to use in this is sushi. So I love sushi. Literally 2 or 3 times a month I go to get sushi. But I'm a vegetarian. 21 years, never eaten meat. So I live for sweet potato rolls, avocado rolls, cucumber rolls, and that's wonderful. But maybe like a traditional Japanese person would say, well, no, that's not sushi. Sushi is raw fish. Eel, octopus, salmon, whatever you're eating, that's truly sushi. Is it fair for me to say, okay, well, I guess I can't call it sushi because I'm not eating raw fish? Is it fair for other people to draw that line for me, saying you're not allowed to eat this because you're not doing it the way that it has been done for years? And we recognize that sushi is from Japan, right? Which 60 years ago was demonized like crazy in World War II. But we recognize that was one part of their tradition, and sushi is another part of their tradition. The same way, I think that's what we have to turn yoga and holy and these things into, that, other people might not understand the caste system and take a lot of action against it and not like things about India, about Hinduism. But we need to maintain that this is the same place, that the karmic roots of yoga and holy are from this same place. We cannot allow it to be completely dissociated from India and Hinduism. I think our job as Hindu Americans is to inform and not impose. We need to make sure that whenever we participate in these actions with people who might not have the same beliefs, who might have an ignorant belief, it is our duty to inform them and tell them, well, yeah, I know this much about it, and this is my tradition, and this is how we do it. But not impose, saying this is how you should do it. That's a call for them to make. And I think that's only fair that we give them the information we have, if they're receptive to it, and don't push our own beliefs on them. Thank you.
Namaste everyone. My name is Sujirta. I went to Dartmouth College. I've been living in Cambridge for 2.5 years, and I think I'm supposed to call myself like a Bostonian now. I don't know if I can ever let go of my New Hampshire roots. Okay, so I'm going to bookend this panel with kind of establishing another kind of framework. So I think the question a lot of people ask me, and my friends ask me, is, well, Hinduism is a religion, right? So how can we appropriate culture from a religion? How do those two things kind of go together? And like, if I'm so worried about appropriating, am I allowed to show up to Garba and Ras? I was recently at a Garba and Ras thing at Tufts, and I was trying to get my friends to come, and they're like, well, I don't want to appropriate your culture. It's like, that's fine. So we have to talk about kind of what these things mean. So the first question first. If it's a religion, how do you appropriate culture from it? So one thing we have to note is that Hinduism is kind of unfairly boxed into this small, tight thing of what a religion is supposed to be. It's not really an ism. Yes, we talk about spirituality, we talk about religion, we talk about morality, how to live our life, all these things that fall under the banner of religion. But that's not all Hindu texts talk about. That's not all even the Vedas have in them, right? The Vedas talk about art, they talk about music, they talk about math, astronomy, physics. There's so many things that are part of the Vedas. There's so many things that are part of these texts that are the most fundamental in Hinduism, right? So first of all, let's stop calling it that. Let's call it Sanatana Dharma. Because that way, when we talk about this culture, we don't have to restrict it to religion. we don't have to restrict it geographically to India. We don't have to call it Indian culture, because I have some Nepalese friends who would be very offended if I said that about Hinduism. So let's talk about it as Sanatana Dharma. So this dharmic culture. So, now that we've established its culture, it's a civilization, it's been around for centuries. What does a civilization mean? What are the goals of a civilization? Well, first of all, it's develop knowledge, accumulate knowledge, establish a legacy, and establish some sort of continuity, not just for this knowledge, but even for the people that have it, for that community. You want a legacy and a continuity in the people. How do you do that? People are supposed to have some pride in themselves, right? I'm going to identify myself as Hindu if when I say that puts a smile on my face. That makes me stand up straighter, feel taller, feel better about myself. That's what's going to get me to identify as Hindu. That's what's going to get me to pursue things in Hinduism. That's what's going to get me to kind of be here and talk about Sanatana Dharma and tell all my friends, hey, I was at Drishti and we were talking about Hinduism and it was the best time, right? So how do we do that? Well, so let's look at some examples of places that have done that really well. Let's think about Greece. Greece is in complete economic turmoil. It is a disaster right now. It's been a disaster for quite a while. But when we talk about Greece, when we talk about the Greeks, that's not what we remember. We remember them for their literature, for their science, for their philosophy, for all these discoveries that we keep talking about, their math, their science. Let's keep in mind Greece has won exactly 2 Nobel Prizes, ever. Both in literature, the last one was 40 years ago. So it's been a while since they've been, there with any of this. We talk about the fact that Olympics, they won 6 medals in the last Olympics, that's a lot less than the US. Why do we talk about all these things? They've managed to establish a legacy for themselves. Every time we talk about philosophy, they say, Greek philosophy, they drill it into your heads. It's there. We've all heard the phrase, we all know it. What have we done for ourselves? Do we know? So Pythagoras was Greek. We all know the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. It's fundamental. We've all learned it. Do most of us know that Indians, Hindu sastras, came up with it first? The Fibonacci sequence, we came up with it first. Pascal's triangle, we came up with it first. These are just some of the basic math concepts. We've lost this. The number system we use right now, we call the Arabic number system. It's recently been renamed the Hindu Arabic number system. You guys want to know why? Because it was discovered in India, and it's only called the Arabic number system because that's how it got to Europe. It went from India to Arabia or the Middle East to Europe. So we've lost that. We've lost that because we've lost that legacy. And now we're starting to lose that with our spirituality and our culture. We need to keep our labels. We need to make sure we're acknowledged for what we want. Otherwise, it leaves us open for attack. Not just here, even in India, it keeps us in the position to be attacked culturally with colonialism ideas. It keeps us in a position to be attacked by other religions and be told that we have nothing to be proud of. It keeps us in a position to be attacked. Answering one of the first questions I said though, I think my friends should show up to Garba, should show up to Raz, should do all these things, should participate with me, as long as they acknowledge that label.
So one thing I'd like to mention or tie in together is when Arnav was talking, he said something along the lines of how Hindus themselves here have appropriated Ras and Garba. And one article I read recently said Indian Americans growing up here were born one culture yet born into another. And growing up, we faced that whole power struggle of that whole asymmetrical power struggle that Ravi was mentioning before. What can you do? So my question is, one experience that you've had with cultural appropriation growing up, how can, what was that experience for you? And how did you overcome that power struggle or deal with it?
I don't know if it's so much a power struggle. I could give you one experience that was more humorous than anything. I work as an RA at my school, and on my staff last year, one of my staff members held a program. For those of you who don't know, RA is a resident assistant. They manage like a dorm building, and they have to throw on different programs every couple of weeks to engage the residents. So one of the RAs on my staff put on a mindfulness meditation program. And usually the rest of the staff shows up to show support. And there was one girl on my staff, she was Tamil, also Hindu. And we go and we're watching this presentation by the school's psychological center about how meditation helps with mental health. And we were talking about how it is a great thing that meditation is catching on because there are these empirical scientific benefits to it, which are being proven by the West recently. And that's what they were talking about. They were saying, oh, recent research has shown that meditation is helpful. And I said to her, I was like, recent research? We figured this out like 3,500 years ago. It's not recent at all. And it was a funny experience to see how it was being, almost verified by the authority that is Western science, and then presented as if, before that, no, we can't present this crazy Hindu, mythical, magical thing that is mindfulness meditation, and now that we've done our own research and we've established it to be okay, that's okay. So that was an interesting experience.
So I'm gonna there we go. I'm gonna talk about an experience that's like kind of even more everyday almost. So elementary school. So like the way I'm dressing right now, like the bindi on my forehead, none of this is really unusual for me. This is how I dress every day. Those of you who saw me yesterday, like I'm wearing my sweatshirt, whatever. Same thing, I've got the braid going, it's all there. And that's the way I dressed in elementary school, and that's the way I dressed in middle school, and I got made fun of for it, and I got made fun of for like the dot on my forehead, for the food I brought that like always smelled different and funny and whatever else. And like I think I got really used to trying to like explain myself away. It's like, the half sari, it's basically just like a skirt and a blouse. Like I don't know why they put hooks on it. It's like weird, okay? Like let it go. My food, it's just rice, like there's not really spices in it, whatever. Mom, I'd rather just kind of take a sandwich if that's okay. And then I got to high school, and like I gotten used to kind of eating my lunchbox in my corner by myself, like don't anyone look at my food. And one of my friends comes over and she's like, "You have Indian food? Oh my god, I want some." I'm like, this is the same group of people I've been going to school with since I was 3 years old. It's like, what is wrong? When did you change? When did I become cool? When did my stuff that I've been like explaining away my entire life, that I've been hiding, been embarrassed about, suddenly become cool? And like I think that for me was just like, I don't know if I've like gotten over it or how I've dealt with it, but that for me is like an experience that was just like, oh my god, I'm so frustrated. And for me, like, is what cultural appropriation kind of also falls into, this thing of like, I've been made fun of for this for so long, and suddenly you guys think it's cool, so it's okay. And I think one of the ways I try to deal with it is like, my parents have friends who have kids that are in elementary school, and I try to talk to them about it. Like, you guys need to realize that like, when you're my age, this is all cool. Like, embrace it, live with it. It's not something you have to hide.
So one interesting experience that I can share related to this topic is back when I was at Rutgers University, I was part of the HSC over there, and we actually did a bunch of interfaith work within HSC. So we not only attended kind of these regular interfaith group meetings, but we also had like one large event a year as part of the interfaith club. So two things happened. One thing was that I was able to really address the common misconceptions of Hinduism on stage to a large audience, especially people who are fluent in religion and such things. And really the other amazing thing that happened was talking about the swastika. Now the swastika was super misappropriated in the most terrible way possible, and we suffer for it to this day. If you have it on your car after you do the Vahana Puja, you just get a new car so you get Puja. People could egg your car or something. And then there's of course similar issues with the tilak and other kinds of kind of external markings. So when we were meeting with the Jewish student group, which is the Hillel over there, we were able to clarify the roots and how it was misappropriated and the true meaning that it's a symbol of peace and auspiciousness and prosperity. And we try to put this in our homes, in our vehicles, and almost on a daily basis we make it with kumkum. So it really fostered an environment of connection and kind of resolution that actually has been replicated around the world. Swami Dayananda Saraswati, who is no longer unfortunately with us, he is the convener of the Hindu Dharma Acharya Sabha, and that basically means that it's the largest group of Hindu acharyas that come together on a common ground to represent Hinduism to the world. So Swami Dayananda Saraswati, with members of the Hindu Dharma Acharya Sabha, met with a rabbinical group from Israel and basically had like a 3-day long meeting where they talked about the similarities, differences, and especially the swastika. And this rabbinical group like made a resolution, as these groups do, that the swastika is no longer considered a hate symbol, is no longer considered XYZ by the Jewish community, thanks to the clarifications that were made. So I think that it's really up to us as young Hindu leaders and advocates to positively kind of represent, to authentically, genuinely talk about the spiritual significance underlying everything that we do, whether it's, oh, you guys worship monkeys or cows, or, you know, what's up with that weird thing and this, like, it's really up to us to take control of the conversation and put aside whatever shame we may carry, because I used to have a lot of shame identifying as a Hindu, like, oh, I'm actually cultural more than religious. But there's an immense depth that we can learn and benefit from internally, and also like advocate for externally, that really has a positive impact. And at least within HSC, in my tenure at HSC, on the HSC board, it's just been really amazing making these connections both within the Hindu community and outside the Hindu community.
So I don't really have a specific example of cultural appropriation. I was pretty guarded, like I had a pretty guarded childhood. Didn't really have a lot of non-Indian or Hindu friends. Most of my friends were at Chinmaya Mission, but one thing I did notice from the few Hindus I met outside of Chinmaya Mission was, especially growing up in Dallas, which is a pretty conservative environment, a lot of them would say, my family's Hindu, but I'm not really Hindu, or I'm spiritual, but I don't really consider myself religious. And a couple of people have made statements like that today, that my friends would, throw those taglines out like, Hinduism's a way of life, but it's not really a religion for me. And my problem is, those statements are fine if you can kind of back it up and explain without saying, okay, well, yoga is Indian, it's not really Hindu, therefore I'm Indian, but I'm not really Hindu. As long as you can, back that up, it's fine. But what my friends would do is they would say, okay, well, guys, like, whether it's an Indian restaurant or taking Bollywood dance classes, whatever it might be, they would take credit for those things, but they would really shy away from any of the negative points of Hinduism. And to me, the only time you can really claim credit for something long-standing is if you're willing to take the positive with the negative. And I think Allegra was the one on the previous panel who said something that is worth repeating, because just how important it is in understanding misappropriation. She said, when she went to those museums and saw those pots or whatever it might be, murtis, I don't remember exactly what she had said, but she said those were things that she recognized as being promoted and used in society for 1,500 years, and the same murtis from then are being used today, and that's what kind of shows her and makes her recognize the importance of the Hindu tradition. I think as long as we can recognize that, then I think that's the most important statement that's been said today, and that's, unfortunately I don't have a specific example, but yeah.
So these things that you notice about how things are misrepresented, Ravi brought up that you can deal with, one way you can deal with misappropriation is by explaining to other people. But a lot of times you don't have the opportunity to get a forum where you can voice your thoughts. We're in a culture, we live in a world where assimilation is demanded by us, but we're also at the same time blocked from assimilating our values with the norm. I'm not sure if I worded that like that great, but so I guess my next question is, sorry, actually one more thing. Siddharth Agarwal, also an executive board member, once said, if everything that Hinduism is good, and all our practices are good, and other people are appropriating it, and so they're doing good things as well, so the world is becoming a better place. Why does it matter that we get out the message that it's Hindu?
I don't know if this mic works. Is it working?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to answer this question for a couple reasons. One, because I'm the one that brought that statement over to this discussion table, and he would hate the fact that I said that he said that, because that was more him playing devil's advocate. So let's not quote him too hard. But also, I think for me the answer is exactly what I just said. Because it's important. We want the world to be a better place. We definitely do. And I think that's something that Sanatan Dharma, as a way of life, like Sanatan Dharma wants the world to be the best possible place it can be, the most peaceful, the good. Yet, and like, I think I want that too. I think I'm a good person. I want people to be happy when I see people on the street that are sad and I can do something to help them. I want to do something to help them. I donate money to good causes, you know? But also, I don't let all those people walk into my apartment and take whatever they want from me. I don't let them take advantage.